Hello everyone. In our day-to-day life, we keep on listening that we talk about problems, whether it is in our home or at work situation or when we are moving out or we are in community. These problems can be for some small, for others it can be large. Some can be difficult, some can be easy problems. Problem solving skills are very important these days, and these are called the life skills. How do you learn from these problems? So today what we are going to see is the problem-based learning. What is problem-based learning? Have you ever thought of it? We keep doing it in our day-to-day life. Let's take an example. Suppose electricity goes away in our homes. What do? Either we solve it ourselves, we try to find it out what is the problem, rather what is the cause. We try to solve it ourselves. If we are not able to do it, we call someone, as that is an electrician. So we try to solve that why there is no current or electricity. So what is a problem-based learning? Let's see that. Through this video, what will be our learning outcomes? Firstly, it will be describing what is problem-based learning, which is, if you see in the literature, commonly denoted as PBL. Second learning outcome or the objective of our learning today is explain the advantages and the disadvantages. Third and the most important learning outcome is that we state the functions. We see how do you organize this problem-based learning. Simple definition or what it is given in the literature about problem-based learning is where learners work together. Very important point is where the learners, they are working together to solve real world problems. Another very important point here in problem-based learning is it's a real world problem where in the schools and communities. Very important. Schools here I have just written, it can be colleges, it can be universities or any other educational organization. Communities is where we live. So problem-based learning is where each one of us as learners, we work together to solve the real world problems. Second, what it is defined or how it is explained, the problem-based learning is that it is a learner-centered approach. All of us, we have seen our teaching learning process have been teacher-centered. Whether it is again I say in schools or in higher education institutions where student is not in the forefront but teacher is there, whatever teacher says, that's it. So problem-based learning is a learner-centered approach where learners learn about a subject by working in groups, again to solve a problem. Many times if you see it's written working in groups, many times we do individual problem solving also. So basic point which we want to highlight in problem-based learning is that it is a learner-centered approach. Why we need to have this strategy, that is the problem-based learning in our schools or in colleges. The first and the foremost important point why do we opt for problem-based learning is that it makes learners engaging. Now engaging, what do we mean by that? A group of learners, when they try to solve a problem, they are working together and they are engaged in solving that problem. And that is a very important learning science. When we say how human learns better when they are engaged in a learning process. Second point here is problem-based learning improves the learning part of it. We say in the learning theories that learning is either fragile or it is sustainable. Fragile is when we forget about it. Sustained is when we remember over a period of time or maybe lifelong. So problem-based learning is one method, one strategy which improves our learning. Thirdly, it connects the students. How it connects the students? Like if we say in a classroom, students are sitting and the teacher is teaching. There is either no interaction or there is a less of interaction. But in problem-based learning, the students, they are talking to each other, they are connecting to each other. That's why problem-based learning is important, because it is connecting to the learners. Next point why it is important is it provides opportunities to our learners to use technology. If we say few years back there was no revolution in the information and communication technologies, but now these days there is a lot of accessibility to our learners in the use of technology. So, and you have seen in your own day-to-day life, in your assignments, in your project works, what you do is you immediately Google and you try to find out what is the solution of the problem or what is the question asked. So problem-based learning provides opportunities to students to use technology. How they use it? The younger generation, they use it in many ways, and many softwares, many websites, and so on. Next point is problem-based learning builds success skills. Very important. Why we say success skills? Because once you find a solution, you feel empowered. So success skills are very important whenever we learn through a problem-based strategy. And the last, if I say so, that problem-based learning makes teaching more enjoyable and rewarding. Here it's not only teaching, we must say learning. So teaching learning becomes much more enjoyable through problem-based learning and much more rewarding. You can imagine yourself once, whenever you are able to solve the problem, you feel so excited, you feel so rewarding. Whether someone gives you that reward, that is the external reward, but you yourself, that is the inner reward you feel. It's an inner enjoyability what you have it. So problem-based learning makes our teaching learning more enjoyable and rewarding. Coming to the advantages of the PBL, first is it focuses on teaching to a focus on learning. This I am sure all of you must have understood that the focus here is not on teaching, the focus here is on learning. And second important advantage is use of real world problems, which we saw in our earlier slide, that problem-based learning is when you solve real-world problems. Just here I want to highlight is how it started. Problem-based learning actually started in way back in 1960s, and that too in the medical science. So medical science was the one field, one discipline where problem-based learning was initiated. Now I think problem-based learning is being used by the institutions, by the teachers, by the instructions, whether you say maths, whether you say law, whether you say social sciences, and so on. But it started in the medical sciences. Now, coming to why and how it is important for our learners, for our students. So firstly, as we said, it is a learner-centered approach, not a teacher-centered approach which we see our education system is all about. Second is, it's enjoyable and satisfying for learners, which we have already discussed about it. Third is, it encourages comprehension. It encourages understanding. Problem-based learning encourages the comprehension, the understanding part of our learning. Students rate their abilities higher. Again, if I say it relates to the success part of it. I am able to do it. I am able to solve the problem. That's what this statement means, that learners, they rate their abilities. That's very important to give confidence to our learners. And last, how it is helpful our students, that it develops lifelong learning skills. Now, from students to how it is helpful for the teachers, for the instructors. Firstly, it gives or it increases the students' attendance. I think in many of our in higher education institutions, if we see, if the classroom is not interesting, if it is not motivating, students, they don't come to the class, which is not a situation at the school levels. In school, we have to go to the classroom, but in higher education institutions, if we say in our day-to-day language, students do bunk the class. So for teachers, if they get into this mode of learning, the learner's attendance increases. This method affords more intrinsic rewards. It encourages the learners to spend more time on learning, and it promotes interdisciplinarity. How interdisciplinarity? Let's take an example of a problem of pollution. All of you know that that's one of the major problems which each one of us, we are suffering, whether we say India, within India, in the other states, or even in the world. When we say how to solve the problem of a pollution, what we are saying, interdisciplinarity, we are trying to understand, comprehend, or relate to mathematics. We are learning geography, we are learning language, we are learning science, and that's what it is called interdisciplinarity. Suppose in a formal classroom, you are just learning geography as a subject, where teacher may not relate it to the mathematics. But mathematics is a very, very important component when we are trying to solve the pollution, because you are saying the pollution level, the carbon dioxide has increased, the sulfur dioxide has increased. That's called how it is increasing. That's why for teachers they are able to make it interdisciplinary when they use problem-based learning. Now coming to the role of the teacher, very important. In formal classrooms, if we say the role of the teacher is just coming and transmitting the knowledge, but here the role of the teacher is as a facilitator and a mentor. The teacher has to keep on seeing, facilitate by giving certain clues, by telling them certain things, where they can find information, how to find information, and so on. So the role of the teacher completely changes when we use problem-based learning. Now, coming to that is the steps in designing a problem-based learning. First and the most important is you introduce a problem at the beginning of the class. Maybe it's not only like if we are starting today, we can easily give the problem to our learners a day before. But it's very important that you introduce the problem at the beginning of your class session. Second is it provides, or the teacher should provide, copies of the problem to each group and each member of the group. Again, that means each member of the group can be or should be given a copy. It can be because, as we said earlier, that problem-based learning is in groups. So you need to provide copies of the problem to each member. Third is provide printed questions related to the problem. What can those questions be? It can be the causes. The teacher can give can be the causes. What are the causes, let's say, of pollution? Then can we find out where to find out those solution to those problems? So one can provide certain printed questions which are related to the problem, so that the students, the learners, they can write information, write down the answers. Say fourth one is assess progress at regular intervals. So it's not that the teacher will give the problem and can just go and have tea in the cafeteria. No, the teacher has to assess the progress at regular intervals, whether the students are on the track or they are not. Allow time for class discussion of the problem at the end of the problem-based learning session. Very important. Once you have found out the causes, the solutions, the remedies, and so on, the teacher should allow the discussion part in the group, so that the other group members, they know that what is it. Maybe other group has certain other solution. That's what important part is when you are conducting, or what are the steps required in the problem-based learning. Now, how do you get it organized? First, clearly define the purpose, the procedures, and the expectations. That's why we said the teacher is a facilitator. The teacher here is a mentor, because teacher has to clearly define the purpose. You assign students to groups. Many times it is also said that it can be a random group, but if you form a group beforehand, it becomes much easier. Third is, in the organization part of it, that distribute assignments to students the class period before the first session of the problem-based learning. Your room should be conducive for the group work. That is, wherever the groups are sitting, the environment of the room should be good. Next is assign sitting by pasting group numbers on all seats. I think you can do, or maybe you cannot do, because it is more effective if you write down the seat numbers or the group numbers. The next is set up room so that it is accessible to all groups. What we say here is, like, it should not be in a haphazard manner, that one group is sitting here, the next group is very close to that group, so that when the discussion is there, the other group is listening to what the first group is discussing. So that's why it says that the setup of the room should be accessible to all the groups, so that the students can, the learners can, they can talk to each other, and the teacher can also go. The next point here is, I think in all the group works we do that. That is, get your stapler, get your tape, get your textbooks, get your references material, get your copies of the problems for each group. So I think these are the basic points which we usually do in any group work, but it is essential in the problem-based learning also. And the last important point is anticipate problems and ready to handle them very swiftly. So as a teacher, again, the role of the teacher is very important in problem-based learning. That is, the teacher should think beforehand what could be the problems during these group work sessions, and then the teacher should be able to handle it properly. Assessment is a very, very important component in any of the learning strategies, learning assignments. So in problem-based learning, how do you assess it? So focus and purpose is on learning. We should keep this learning point in mind while doing the assessment. Second is, assessment has to be continuous. Next is, role of the instructor is to help students monitor themselves. So the teacher has to see whether I am doing my work, putting my inputs properly. And the last is, students should evaluate the work of their peers as well as of their own. That's what the whole assessment point in the problem-based learning is. But you have seen, or you can think of it, that we don't use these problem-based learning in our classrooms, in our schools, in our educational institutions. Why? Can you think of some of the reasons? Here, let's see what are the reasons. Firstly, it involves a lot of work. Problem-based learning, it involves a lot of work, making groups, making the assignments, assigning group numbers, what will be your assessments, where to find the points, or where to go and find the solutions. So it involves a lot of work. Cost is also involved in problem-based learning. Next is, some teachers, they are not resilient. Like all of us, we say if something comes new for us, we say, oh, we have a lot of workload, I will not be able to do it, I don't have the time. So that is another problem in problem-based learning, that I don't say that all teachers, but some of the teachers, they are not resilient to a change, because all of us, we are very comfortable in our comfort zone. That's what the resiliency here means. And the next point is, students are perceived as not mature. This is a very, very important point when we say, whenever we go to a classroom, if we say, if the teacher is not teaching, can learners learn? The response is at one go, no. This is a perception. But if a problem is given, all of us can solve it. We should not say that the students, they are not mature. Without me as a teacher, the students cannot learn. So that's why we are not using this problem-based learning in our classrooms. Coming to the end part of it, what did you learn in this video, through this video? Firstly, problem-based learning is a student-centered approach. Secondly, teachers here, they are the facilitators. Third, problem-based learning is used to make learners engaged, active, and constructive. And lastly, problem-based learning follows some basic steps to organize. I am sure with this short video, you will be able to implement it, apply it in your day-to-day life as well as in your work situation.